Welcome back to the State and Local Sports Show, Episode 9. I'm here with Mark Tennis, co-founder, editor of CaliSports.com. A week off, we're back at it here, Mark. The first story I do want to touch on is a tough one out of the Sacramento area. Last week, before Grant and Bayer were supposed to play their first-round Division II playoff game, JJ Clavo, a beloved Grant player, was unfortunately shot in a neighborhood nearby. Grant football, as we were kind of talking about before this, as you said, is a huge pillar in that community. It can be a saving grace in a lot of ways, and Coach Mike Alberghini has been a great force for community service there. What were your reactions as a longtime high school sports reporter when you heard this story and what it means for that community at large?
Well, my brother is a police officer who's been in the Del Paso Heights community for many years, and so I'm a little familiar with the community and how close-knit everything is, especially with the football program. And it definitely, was a real sad night, a sad day to hear that news. And, he'd been on the sidelines at Grant games, the Reverend Tommy Williams, and some of the great fans they have, and the drum line, and you just know how hard it hit them to have something like this happen, especially on the eve of a playoff game. And again, it's just really sad and horrible news. And they've moved on a little bit, so to speak, with the game last night on Monday, and they're in Division II, and they might be able to make some play for a few more weeks. We'll see how it goes, but it definitely a bad situation, and you really you're not supposed to root for teams. But a lot of people, believe me, in the Sacramento area and the media root for Grant because of all the hardships that the community and the people that live in that community go through every day.
Absolutely. And taking a look at the playoff games from our area teams, in Division I in the quarterfinals, number 5 St. Mary's goes to number 4 Napa. This, as several other games this week, could be a story of redemption, not for the current players, but for Coach Tony Franks. In 2007, one of the best St. Mary's teams he's had, lost by 2 points to Napa in the section title game at UOP. They also lost, I believe, a semifinal back in the 1990s when Franks was over at UC Davis. When you look at this matchup, Mark, with Napa 11-0, they have at least 2 shutouts this year. They shut out Pleasant Grove last week. How do you see this playing out?
I think it'll be pretty much of a defensive game. It's hard to know about Napa. They do have a win over Campolindo, and they only held them to 10 points, and Campolindo scored 70 in their first-round playoff game, and that's a pretty good team. So they have a lot of strength up front. Napa does. They run. Their quarterback, Cal Bard, runs a lot, throws a lot. I think it's going to be a very close game. I think St. Mary's, being in all the close games they've had this year, especially with Los Gatos, and then the one they had with Cardinal Newman, those are quality teams, and St. Mary's is not going to come up there and fold away in any way, shape, or form. So I think it'll be a game that'll go right to the wire. And while Napa's undefeated, they've had a couple of close calls in recent weeks. Vacaville almost beat them, I think, in week 9. And so that's kind of a close call. So it's not like Napa's, going out and crushing everybody 60-0. So I think it's going to be a close game. It could be an upset special, and regardless, it's going to be a good test for St. Mary's. They have so many good young players. I went and saw the game against Stagg, and their junior class and a couple of sophomores, really impressive. They're going to be a lot better next season. So if you going to get St. Mary's, this is a good year to take them out in the second round.
Yeah, and that's part of what that is the focus of your column this week, talking about how great St. Mary's could be last year. Just like the year before when they were a touchdown away from winning a section title game against Grant, maybe getting a NorCal Bowl game, they're going to be very senior heavy. How do you see that playing out next year? And I really know it's tough to forecast, especially in high school sports, but how do you think they could compare to that group last year, which had one of the best defenses in Northern California?
I think they could be just as good and probably even better on offense with, Dusty Frampton had a big game as a sophomore against Stagg, and they've got Hampton, the receiver, Cotton, the receiver, the quarterback. They're great linemen, Norwood and Almave, both probably major college Division I recruits. Both those 2 linemen, they could be very, very good next year. One of the best teams in the section.
The only game, it's crazy. It wasn't so much a horrible Friday for area teams, but a lot of teams on the road now. The only game in our coverage area, Sierra-Calaveras this week. It could be a great old school Division IV semifinal. Sierra snuck in there. They're 4-5 going into Week 10. They beat Western Ranch by a touchdown. They were one of, I believe, only a couple 5-5 teams to make it in because their strength of schedule, their opponent's win total was so darn high. Calaveras has been solid this year. Finished the year 7-3, within a point or 2 points of beating Sonora, who was a Mother Lode League champion. So it should be a great old school battle up there in San Andreas. And one of the things this taps into is something we've touched on before, which is the nature of enrollment-based divisional brackets. In this case, Sierra last year, co-VOL champion. A superb team. Not to say they're not talented this year, but that was a senior-heavy, a great team. And, they were in Division III, and they got a heck of a 10 seed in Rio Linda. Now they're in Division IV, a year where it's been much more of a roller coaster, but because they get that little bump of luck, they could be a section champion. They could be playing in a NorCal bowl game, and same goes for Calaveras.
Well, yeah, no, if they win, if either of those teams win in Division IV, they are getting a bowl game. Everybody gets a bowl game. So that'll be very interesting. And, when those brackets came out, Division IV was without question probably the most wide open one. Lathrop was the top seed, and they lose in the first round. Calaveras looks pretty good in their first game. In fact, I think they've looked very good the last month of the season, and their 1-point loss to Sonora says a lot. So they could be the team that comes out of that, and that would be kind of cool because the Redskins name, of course, is going to live on as long as we can go. And all the Redskin nicknamed teams actually are still playing in the state, all 4 of them. So maybe 1 or 2 of them will play all the way into December. But I kind of like that Calaveras team. I think they might beat Sierra.
Manteca visiting Inderkum. Manteca right where they were last year at 9-2, heading into the section quarterfinals. But they're a team that they pride themselves on their grinders. Their linebackers like to play, at least defensively, kind of slow the other team down. Facing an Inderkum team they've seen a couple times in the playoffs. Inderkum, I believe, put up 82 points last week. They run a wing T, but you don't see a lot of wing T teams with the explosiveness Inderkum has. Your thoughts on this matchup? A couple of teams who you see year after year in these brackets.
Yeah, I think Inderkum's kind of interesting. They have a hard time when they run into the Valley Oak League teams. They seem to have a hard time beating them and getting over that hump. And this sort of reminds me a little bit of that. However, I don't think Manteca is at the same level as, clearly not at the same level as Oakdale or Central Catholic. So I think Inderkum is probably going to get through. I think they're better, maybe a little better or the same as last year's team. But I think Inderkum's going to get through. That bracket is incredible because you have the number 4 and the number 5. Patterson and Placer are both 11-0 and playing each other in the quarterfinals. That's very, very unusual.
I went out to Manteca practice today, and like Inderkum, Oakdale, a wing T team, Manteca went there and lost 45-14. That was probably their worst game this year. And Coach Eric Reese, a 3-time section champ, says, "Hey, we failed our first test against the wing T. We're hoping we pass the one that matters." Now, looking at Manteca boys basketball, a team that is without a section title since the late '80s, they have a fantastic lineup this year. They got 3 collegiate caliber players, 6'7" or above, in that lineup, and that kind of feeds into something you guys are doing, released tonight, which is Tuesday. This is released afterward, which is your state basketball rankings. Manteca, any other area? I know you can't divulge it before it comes out, but Manteca, any area teams in the mix there?
Manteca is definitely in the mix. We're finalizing it right now. I'm going to go back to the office and we're going to release it before I go home. It'll be our preseason state top 35 package. Our top 15 teams will be free, tagged with our free. The next group of 20 teams will be premium. So people might have to subscribe to see all of them, but eventually if you want to see all our rankings all season long as they happen, you'd probably need to subscribe anyway. But Manteca, getting back to your question, looks like one of the top teams in the section, period, not just enrollment, but overall, period. They're not at the level maybe as Modesto Christian, but they're going to be very good. As you mentioned, they're very big and they have some returning players and transfers, et cetera, et cetera. And the guy that I work with to do basketball rankings, Ronnie Flores, he sees a lot of the players all through the summer at various different events. So we're excited that it's going to come out, and we're excited that basketball is here.
Manteca and Weston Ranch could be in a Great Valley Oak League battle this year. Weston Ranch, as they were last year, contrast in styles. Their guards Fred Lavender and Jalen Ragsdale going to Stanislaus State. They got a 6'9" transfer from Chavez named Anthony Booker, who's going to be playing for Monterey Bay, and he's pivotal for them as they try and get through those trees of Manteca and fight them for a league and maybe a section title. You mentioned the different levels of membership. The Gold Club membership of Cal High Sports, extremely worth your while. Less than $20 a year, less than $2 a month. I know half of you listening are going to buy a no soy peppermint latte for $18 today at Starbucks, so that membership is well worth your while. Mark, as always, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it and enjoy these playoffs and start the basketball season coming up.
Thanks, Tom. It's a great time of the year.